Welcome to a special edition of UGA Sports Live. We have Jim Donnan and Coach, one of your special friends from your ESPN days, joins us once again.
We're glad to have Rece Davis, and particularly with the game day coming here, Rece. Just unbelievable that, big game. And what went into the process of choosing this game when you had your alma mater playing Ole Miss? I mean, I'm sure that you not going to do anything but what's best for the company. And certainly we're glad you're bringing it down here.
Jim, I really think it came down to the simple fact that we could take the show and lead it right into the game. And there's some real value to that. I think it creates a lot of energy around the show. We can do something similar, but I think it'll be far more intense this week when we did last week at Soldier Field. We did first 2 hours plus outside at a good venue, and then we took the rest of the show inside during warm-ups. And that was cool and it was fun, but I think doing that in Athens for an SEC game that has some pretty high stakes is going to feel a little bit different than a neutral site Notre Dame Wisconsin game. There's certainly some energy around that game, but this is going to be different. So I think this is a really compelling game. Arkansas is one of the really good stories of the first month of the season. It's an opportunity to see exactly where they are. Georgia looks like a juggernaut. Our game, we can take game day right into it. So I think that was what carried the day and gave it a little bit of an edge over Alabama and Ole Miss, which certainly has some compelling storylines in its own right.
Yeah, that's true. And one thing you can tell all your people up there, Kirby has been lighting into all our fans about being ready to go at 12 o'clock. So if you go in the stadium that last 45 minutes, you're going to have a lot of fans in there getting behind you too. So he said, hey, we want them to support game day. We want to do all that, but hey, let's be ready when that kickoff comes. And I know that you had a chance to see our team when you did game day down there at Charlotte. What's your overview at this point then and now of how we look?
It's the best defense in the country. Their defensive line is probably the best. And with the unfortunate injury to Rece at Clemson, I would say there's probably not much doubt about that now. Clemson, even prior to Brian's unfortunate injury, I wouldn't say that Clemson's D-line was better. It was perhaps Georgia's equal, if that. So I think you got the best D-line in the country. You've got exceptional linebackers. When you get to full strength with Tyke Smith at safety, I think the secondary is going to be elite and probably already has been playing at an elite level. Offense has come along, and I think this is a team that can win the national championship. It's the advantage that I see with Georgia against Alabama at the moment is playmakers on the defensive front. I don't know if you agree with this or not, and you would know better than I. Alabama's got a lot of really good players on the defensive front, but Georgia has difference makers. And so I think that gives them a little bit of an edge, if you were stacking them up in terms of national championship. In terms of this game this week, I think it gives them a really good opportunity to stop Arkansas's running game. Have to see how healthy KJ Jefferson is. But I just find it hard to believe that anyone's really going to put up a whole lot of points against Georgia this year. And therefore, the offense has a little bit more room for error.
Rece, I want to put my producer hat on a second, just trying to understand campus a little bit and what Saturday is going to be like. If I'm a producer, I love having the stadium as a backdrop, open-ended off of the bridge for the headgear, but I understand how that limits any kind of crowd around it during it. So do you have any details of what Saturday is going to look like in terms of location on campus?
I'm not exactly sure. I'm under the impression, and I hope I don't say anything wrong here, but I think that there are some logistical concerns as it pertains to trucks and different things of that nature with doing the bridge. So I don't think it's going to be there. The first part of the show, as I understand it, the first couple of hours will be at Myers Quad. And then it's going to be a little bit of a haul, as you guys know, but we'll then take the show into the concourse area of the concourse area set. They said we'd be able to drive up, walk, 30, 40 feet and be on the second set. So from a producer's standpoint, and, I work closely with our producer, Jim Galliero, and Drew Gallagher, who's our coordinating producer. We'll have to find something. You don't want to be in any just like long form, tape necessarily, but there we will have to create some bridge time in order to let us get from set A to set B. So, that'll be, it'll give the proper backdrop. We'll be able to get a great access to things leading up to the game. We're hoping to be able to take some of the game camera shots to show some stuff, in the tunnel and backstage and all the things that build the anticipation, the excitement, and hopefully give fans just a little glimpse of something they might not ordinarily see if they were just at home watching on television, or even if they're, in the stadium watching the game, something they wouldn't see even if they were on site.
Well, one thing that we see all the Emmy Award performances by you guys, and game day keeps winning, but just for our fans, approximately how many people actually go into putting this show on? I mean, counting the people, everybody, what's the total there?
When you count everybody, Coach, and we do, because it's really one of the more cool things I think I've experienced in my 30 plus years in television, is that everybody feels a part of the show, from the people who drive the trucks, to the guys who put the set together, to the technicians, to the production assistants who stay back in Bristol and put the show together. I would say we're right in the neighborhood of 100 people, somewhere in that vein, probably 60 to 70 travel. I think I have those numbers right. And, they're all vitally important. And we all, that's cliched. People like to say that a lot. But I think that in this particular case with this show, that there is great pride and professionalism that all of the guys and women that are part of the show, that they take in making sure that their job is well done and prepared for what's always a challenging environment. I mean, the audio guys have a Herculean task every week to make sure not only that we can be heard, but that the mix is right for the people at home. And I know sometimes I get complaints about this, just a little public service announcement. Sometimes the crowd noise is so loud we can't hear you guys. That's a cable system problem or a settings problem on your television. I promise you that, because I did the same thing, and you have to look into that either through your cable box, satellite provider, or on your television set. There, that's the end of your public service announcement. But we've got a lot of people that do it. One of the things that I've done since I started doing the show 7 years ago, we have a truck driver who's been with the show for years and years, named Tommy Marshall. Tommy's driven for everybody in the world, rock bands, you name it. He's a great guy. And I don't go on the set on Saturday mornings until I meet Tommy at the bottom of the steps before I go on the stage, and we do this handshake thing. It's not like a fancy handshake. It's just a customary handshake. But we stand there, we square shoulders, we shake hands, and then I walk up to the set and do the show. It's like a superstition for me.
Hey, that's a good way to get it going. Talking a little bit more about football here now that we've got the show all set up.
Yeah, I've bored you to tears, Coach. I'm sorry.
No, our fans want to hear that. That's part of the
Dayne likes it because he's a TV nerd like me.
That's a prologue, man. That's what we need. But you know me, I like to talk some ball. So
yes, sir, me too. That's why I like calling you all the time.
Everybody knows about the SEC right now, but the pretenders around the country, it looks like Oregon to me is definitely a team that might be one. I don't know if there's anybody else that's even close, because Penn State's got to prove their mettle, in their league, and Ohio State, Michigan. So what's your take on Oregon at this point? I think you know Mario Cristobal well through his association with Alabama and everything. So tell our fans about that.
I think that Oregon is really good. I think that I have them ranked number 3 behind Alabama and Georgia. I think they're deserving of that. Their lack of really wiping people out bothers me a little. Not going to lie about that. Now, they've had injuries. Kayvon Thibodeau is the singular most destructive force in college football, but he hasn't been healthy. And so I think that's part of it. Their quarterback, Anthony Brown, played at Boston College. He got over 5,000 yards in his career. He scored a bunch of touchdowns throwing and running at BC. He's an experienced guy. He's solid. I don't know that he's necessarily an elite difference maker, although he played very well at Ohio State. So I worry about the letdown with them, about the losing the game they shouldn't. That, and they also have some road tests. They have to go to UCLA, who I think is a good team also. So I worry about a letdown with them. But the good news for Oregon, Jim, is I think that they've actually put themselves in position so that they can. I think they're in really good shape. They're certainly in good shape against a one-loss Big Ten champion. If it comes to that, they might even, be in good shape against an undefeated one, depending on who it is. If it were to come down to those two, certainly ahead of, I think, whoever the ACC champ would be, perhaps even with a stumble. So, they're still in pretty good shape. I don't think they're in a situation it would serve them well to win all of their games, as it would anyone. That's stating the obvious. But I don't think that they're eliminated if they stumble. That said, the inexplicable head scratching, how do they lose that game? Kind of worries me a little bit about them. Other than that, I think they're really good and they're very, very talented.
Certainly, that's about the way I feel it too, because they got the monkey off their back with that big win over Ohio State. But I think psychologically they felt like we got to do it. But once they got on the field with them, it's pretty obvious they were the best team that day.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree.
They really looked. So, talking about the SEC a little bit, how do you feel about a two-team SEC grouping getting in, particularly if Georgia and Alabama completely dominate the league, like it could happen. Now, I worry about Florida. I would certainly worry about what's going to happen with Ole Miss on Saturday, but I think Nick's had a year to work on them, so hopefully they can do better. But can you see two teams from our league getting in?
Yes, easily. They've really controlled most of the non-conference play. They've looked the part. I don't think, and in fact, I won't even say I don't think, I'm quite certain that Alabama is not nearly as good as it was last year. They're not even as good as they were in 18 and 19, in my judgment. They've got really good players, but they're not as experienced, and they have, a lot of different parts. So I'm not sure that the gap is there between Alabama, Georgia, and the rest. There is a gap. It's not as big, I think, maybe is a better way to put it. So I think it's a real possibility that even if one of those teams have one loss, nobody's getting in, I don't think, with two losses. But, if one were undefeated, the other had one loss, and the undefeated team fell to that, I think there would be no doubt they would both get in, or little doubt, I should say. And if you have two undefeated teams get there, whether that's, Georgia and Alabama most likely, or if it, were to be, Georgia and Ole Miss. Georgia doesn't play Ole Miss, I don't think, do they? Wouldn't until the championship game. So if Arkansas will take care of it Saturday, so it wouldn't be them. But if it were even Georgia and Ole Miss, I think you'd probably wind up in a similar situation. If you have that showdown between two undefeated teams in Atlanta for the SEC championship, I think they're both getting in.
Rece, I was getting nervous for college football as a whole with the predictability of 4 or 5 teams really having a shot to get in that Final Four. And it was just the same programs every year. A month into the season, we've seen Clemson falter. Oklahoma looks like it's on some fragile ground. Is that exciting for you all to see that this may be one of those years? I'm not saying 07, but just one of those years where there's more parity, at least so far.
Everybody says they've been hungry for it. I'll be interested to see if they really are, because I think that there's some real value to slaying the giant. Now, it'll be fun when it happens, because you can, you look at Alabama, and really, I would even say this probably applies to Clemson. Alabama since 08, and Clemson probably since 15. You can recite chapter and verse of every loss. Ohio State's almost in that category. Every game they've lost over that period of time, whether you're a fan of that team or not. Oh, I remember that. Well, that was a big one. What a game that was. What a performance by Rondell Moore to beat Ohio State. Oh, you see what Iowa did? Iowa came out there and threw it all over Ohio State. Oh, Chad Kelly bounced the ball off a tuba and beat Alabama. Everybody remembers those games. I mean, Clemson, we went up to Syracuse, couldn't beat them. Clemson, Syracuse running up and down the Carrier Dome. Everybody remembers them because it's slaying the giant. There's value in that. So I do understand the desire for new teams in, so it doesn't seem like it's a foregone conclusion. And I think you're starting to get the feel of that. I was never as up in arms about it as some people were, because I'm old. I mean, I these things happen. People said in the early 2000s, oh, USC will never lose again in Southern California and the sunshine and all the great players. Now they can't find a coach, so it's these things. I don't want to say cyclical because Alabama's sort of redefined what a cycle is, and Clemson, despite its troubles this year, sort of on its way to doing that, and they're real close if they haven't already. But these things change, circumstances change. A breakthrough player comes along, a program gets aligned with the, as Kirk was talking about with Miami the other day, with the president and the athletic director and the head coach, and things start falling into place and they start winning, they gain momentum, and then they become the giant. And, I've been of the opinion, and Alabama and Georgia both have huge games this week. But they're always sort of compared to each other because they've been on this parallel track, with the exception of Georgia finishing the deal. I don't know when Georgia will beat Alabama. Who knows if they'll even play this year, but I have this weird feeling that like someday when they do, it's not going to be on a Tua-like play, or it's not going to be on a field goal thing. They're going to beat them like 92-6. Like they're just going to take out all of the frustrations in one fell swoop, and things change, So I do think that there are signs that things are changing this year. Some big change. Oregon was in the first playoff, by the way, but if you have Arkansas or Ole Miss breakthrough, or, if whoever else it might be, if you have a Big 12 team, sneak in there that hasn't been to it yet, or, if even UCLA, comes back and runs the rest of the way and beats Oregon, wins the Pac-12, looks really good. If Michigan, dominates the Big Ten and gets in, certainly that all those things would be good and interesting and exciting. But I haven't been as up in arms over the three dynasties, and really four, if you want to count Oklahoma too, the four programs that have dominated the playoff. It'll change, before Stoops, Oklahoma was a mess too, so everybody's had their periods of being messed up.
Yeah, you did a good job of chronicling the last 15 years. You got it down, man. So
I know it. Kirk never lets me talk, so I talk too much when I come on shows with you.
I like you to talk. I like you. Hey, they get tired of hearing us. But I was just going to ask you what you think at this point about the transfer portal and its effect. It's obvious. It's been very effective for a lot of teams. But as an old coach, I worry about too many of these kids leaving too quickly. I think it's too easy to quit, but you see the dynamic difference in, like that running back for UCLA or that quarterback for Western Kentucky. That kid's on fire. You just get a good player in there and it makes a lot of difference. But how do you think the effect is going to be, not only for football, but basketball moving forward?
Well, it's certainly a challenge for both. And I understand, coaches being frustrated by it, especially if they've developed a player and put time in recruiting him and they lose him. But, I'm in favor of it because an athlete's career in college is really short. And even though I know they have the name, image, and likeness opportunities now, if we're not calling them professionals and they're not employees, which I don't think the schools are suited to make them employees, then I think that we ought to allow them to choose where they want to go to school and where they want to play. But your point is also true. When I say that, people say, oh, you're just saying they can quit. No, I'm saying they're adults and they can be allowed to make mistakes. And many times, not all the time, sometimes a guy should leave. It's not a good fit. Things haven't gone right. There have been, wires crossed, trusts broken, and they should leave. But there are also times when they ought to stick it out. But I have a hard time legislating that they aren't allowed to make a mistake. This is sort of my philosophy in life. You need to make informed decisions and you need to own them. And guys are going to make mistakes leaving too quickly. There's no question about that. We've seen it. It's happened. Guys have messed up their careers leaving too early. But I think they should have the right to do it. I think that's probably the best way. And you do your dead level best as everybody in the original institution to try to not force them, but convince them why it's better for them to stay where they are. We do too much in society of trying to make people do stuff when we would be better off trying to convince them why it's good to do stuff. And I think that's something that gets undersold sometimes. Hey, these kids today, they just leave. Convince them why they should stay. You know, if they come in and they're 18 and they're homesick and they're not playing and, you know, they're not doing the right thing and they skip the class, convince them, do these things, you will play because you will improve and you will earn it. And, you know, it's like a guy that was at the Georgia, I'm sure that you know that I love quoting every now and then because he had some of the great lines of all time. I don't think this is totally true, by the way, but I do understand the sentiment. Jim Herrick used to say, I don't decide who plays. You decide by how well you play, you know, and, you know, I'm sure there are a lot of players who could point to things that maybe where that's not entirely accurate, but there is a huge, huge piece of truth in that. And convincing guys why they should stay it's hard because there are a lot of people pulling them in a lot of different directions in many cases, but that's the answer. Convince them why. They chose Georgia, they chose Tennessee, wherever it is. Tell them why they should stay and convince them and show them and invest in them, develop those relationships, and you'll be less likely to lose guys. But it is an opportunity for young people to make mistakes. There's no question about that. But there are also instances where it's opportunities for young people to grasp opportunities and do better.
Hey, that was a good analysis of it. I'm all for it a little bit later after they stuck it out and then, you know, tried everything. But then, hey, give them a chance somewhere else. But we're going to finishing up here, but I've got a couple more things. But before I forget it, I'd like if we just give our fans, which we used to hang up there, just a little bit of Larry Munson for me. Give me just a little Larry Munson.
I can't believe you're going to ask me to do this, but because there are so many
Georgia people want you. We just had that thing on Sunday night about him, and hey, go ahead and do it for us.
I will. I feel badly because I know there's so many real dyed-in-the-wool Georgia fans that do it so much better than I. But I loved Larry Munson. Loved listening to Larry Munson, and maybe he would say something like this on Saturday. And now we're going to get after the big Razorback quarterback, and we can't get him down on the ground. And now Jordan Davis is going to pull him down. And it's about, oh, look, we got the ball. We got the ball. Oh my God, we got the ball. How's that?
Hey, that's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, way to do it. Our fans will love that for sure.
I loved Larry, man. I tell you, I listened to him do a basketball game one time. They were playing Florida, and Dwayne Shinsis played for the Gators. And he kept talking about, oh, they're going to throw it into the big giant. We've got no chance to stop the big giant. He just kept calling it the big giant.
Yeah. Hey, well, people don't know how much fun we had behind the scenes up there. I see Mark May's name up there. A lot of good times we had. And
yes, sir.
I remember when Holtz was on there that time with me and you and May Day. And he said the guy had a shoulder operation on his elbow, and we both thought, right there but he could come up with things. But you know, the last thing I want to ask you, and I'll let Dayne finish up. What about just your overview of our quarterback JT Daniels and his progress and what the future lies with us, looking from a standpoint outside the program? Because you know everybody's got their own feeling about him and everything, and he's missing Pickens and all that. But how do you feel about him?
I'd like to see him, and I think you're starting to see a little bit of this, but I'd like to see him be a little more aggressive. But I do think it's smart that he takes care of the ball. He play complementary football. You don't want to give the other side, you know, good field position and easy scores when you've got a defense like you have. But he also has the ability to be aggressive, and I'd like to see him continue to do that. And I think he will. You know, I know it's a different level of competition, but maybe old Stetson coming in there and putting up Madden and NCAA 14 numbers might inspire you, you know, to look for the big shot a little bit more. But you know, I think JT's a really good quarterback. I think he's certainly developed a good chemistry with the young tight ends. So I think that they're a good thing. I think Georgia's offense is going to continue to grow. Hey, one of the things that happens, Coach, and you can speak to this better than I, when you've had as much success as Georgia has had, and you're as good, and the expectations are so high, and the recruiting has been so good, that there's this feeling that they have to be a finished product the second they step out on the field.
Well, develop, right.
Yeah. There is no rule that says Wake Forest is allowed to improve over the course of the season, but Georgia can't because they got all those 5 stars. They can't improve. So, I think that you're going to see Georgia's offense continue to grow, become more explosive, even more efficient. And when you pair it with that defense, this could be the year that Georgia wins a national championship. There's no question about that.
Rece, with you guys coming to Athens and David Pollack not having to travel, you all should make him cook for you on Friday night. So that's one thing. My final question.
I wouldn't eat that. Thank you, though.
The show may not go off if that's the case, is what you're saying. Final thing is, one of the joys of my young professional career has been becoming really family friends with Coach Donnan, and I see the connection he has with so many people around the sport, you included. So how did your friendship with Coach Donnan develop, and what is it that still keeps it so strong today?
Well, I think we got to know each other when he was working at ESPN, and we spent a lot of time talking when we would do those midweek studio shows and stuff like that. And he's always been really kind and supportive, and he's always there to answer my questions. And we'll text back and forth on a pretty regular basis about a bunch of different things. And he loves football. He's always, he's a great family man, as you know. He loves his children and grandchildren, which is the real mark of character for any person, I think. And he's interested in others. And, he never fails, as you heard when we started, he's asking about my kids and how things are going. And, but it's not a perfunctory thing where he's just doing it to be polite. He cares, and you can't fake that. And I think it's what made him a great coach. It's what made him a great recruiter, the ability to connect to people. Now we know he can dial up ball plays. I mean, he can draw up the O's to beat your X's with the best of them. We all know that. But what sets somebody apart is the way they handle people. And Jim has been a great friend. And there are a few people I've met in my career who have connected with people better than he does. So I'm honored to call him a friend, and I'm pleased that he puts up with me when I come on the shows with him, and even when I call him and ask him questions that he might think are stupid sometimes, but I'm glad he takes time to answer them.
Hey, well, I appreciate that nice compliment. We're looking forward to having you here. Hopefully we can get together. We'll set that up later. But
all right.
It's just a real thrill for our fans. I don't think anybody has any clue up there sometimes this kind of schedule you have, but to give us this 25, 30 minutes, it means so much to me personally, but also our fans, to give us a little insight into what goes on with game day, what goes on with your thoughts around the country, because, we're pretty much geared in the way we look at things, but tremendous perspective by you today, and look forward to seeing you on Friday or Saturday. Okay.
It sounds good. I'll give you a call. We'll get together when I get to Athens.